this piece of music was made here. And also in an imaginary place that doesn't exist. Hey guys, for this second process video about step by step, I want to talk about the process of working with live musicians to bring the song to life. And of course, this process was especially interesting because I made this song in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. For this song, the harp was recorded in LA, the strings and the woodwinds were recorded in Nashville, the piano scenes were filmed in Colorado, and mixing and mastering happened all the way over in Singapore. I'll talk about each of those stages, and then we'll hear from some of the people that I worked with. First, we're going to talk to Lowleaf, who did the harp for the piece. I reached out to her because I had seen her open up for Highest Coyote in San Francisco about 5 years before. And she did this solo performance, singing and playing harp, and it was just super impressive. And then I had also seen her cover a song from One Piece on her harp on Insta, actually. And I thought like the harp part is really important for this piece, and I think that she could really nail it. So I just sort of cold messaged her on Instagram and she got back to me. It was awesome. Next, we're going to talk with David Angel, who led the string quartet for this piece. So I had actually worked with David and his quartet before on various other pieces while I was living in Nashville in early 2020. And they're the quartet that's on Ground, for example. Funny enough, I actually met him through my dad's old guitar teacher, who recommended me to David when I asked him about violin players in the area. It turns out that they are some of the most booked violinists for sessions in Nashville. Yeah, so anyway, here is one of the Davids, David Angel, talking about us working together.
I've been playing in a small quartet situation for 25, 30 years. David Davidson is the first violinist, and you saw Chris Wilkinson, the violist, and Sari Rice played cello, and Joel, that actually makes it a quintet, but Joel is
right.
Principal bassist in the symphony here and married to Sari, so they're quite a great team.
I didn't realize that they were husband and wife.
Yeah, Dave's had a studio in his home that he really built for the purpose of his own music, and we found that we've been over there quite a bit. You know, now with the new technological advances, we can just as easily work with London as we can just to go down to Berry Hill and cut a track. So we have been doing a lot of international products, do a lot of work with Europe, and one day I went over to Dave's house and Engelbert Humperdinck is up there in the control room.
Wow.
And Jason Mraz has come and we've jammed together.
Oh my God.
KT Tunstall, Train, Chris Wilkinson, Chris Stapleton, and Harry Underwood. Over the years, we've played on a lot of hits at Dave's house, and I'm very thankful that he opens his doors for us.
If everyone's more comfortable and it's like perhaps less of a formal environment, people can get better takes.
Mm-hmm. We do a lot of different things together, and it's a nice little tight-knit community. You can hardly call it work.
Chris Stapleton and Carrie Underwood, and now little me. You worked with me.
You're on the rise.
It's been really great working with you guys, and you know, I suspect it's not our last time doing it.
I certainly hope not. I thought that your video portrayed quite well the abilities we have to make music in different rooms together. If you're meticulous with your articulations,
yep,
you can merge different people and different environments into
Sure.
the same track as if it was all done in the same room and no one would ever know.
Totally. Yeah, you have to be, like you said, you have to be pretty specific about it. That's a thing for composers to consider too, right? That like, all right, is this a crescendo right here? How loud do I want them to play it? This, that, and the other, because so much is not going to be inferred from context of being in the same room with the other section.
I thought it was beautiful how you were able to take the pizzicato and the second violin part and merge it seamlessly into the harp.
Oh, thank you.
And it's those kind of things that if you take care of making sure the interwovenness of the track functions well, there's no reason we can't record intimate music in different places.
I mean, that's what this project was an experiment in. Like, y'all were in one room, the woodwinds were in another room,
Mhm.
the harp was in another room, and then the rest of the instruments were digital.
I would like to try. One compositional technique is inversion.
Yeah.
I'd like to try an inversion of environment where we get the seat on the top of the mountain and you are sitting at home in your studio.
Oh, I see.
You
You're
do
talking
always
about where
seem,
I was in the cabin?
yeah, you do always seem to have the best seat in the house. I love the snow scene. Where was that shot?
One of my best friends from growing up here in Colorado, um, his family has a cabin. We were up there, and it's pretty rustic in the winter because it's like remote enough that this is difficult to deal with. There's generally not running water. In skiing, they call it like a hut trip. So it's as if you are like a cross country ranger or something, and there's these huts that are set up for you to sleep in, and they got food in them and maybe like fuel to burn and like power, but not running water except for there's one toilet. So that was good.
But they're not serving eggs Benedict up there, are they?
You got to make it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone, all three of us were a little stinky by the end, and we're skiing during the day, and it
Well,
was
that's
it
got to
was
be
great.
fun. I
Huh.
love the shot you had of the forest. Was that your photography or?
Oh, you mean like in the middle?
Yeah, the green trees in the forest. That was so gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
My buddy just found stock footage for that part because
Okay.
we couldn't like, it was the winter and I don't have a good camera. That's where that shot's from, and the audio is from there's actually like this community of people who make ambient recordings online. It's all fair use. I think it's called Free Sound. This guy's like, this is an hour recording from this forest in the Netherlands or whatever.
Wow. Sweet.
It's pretty fun. It's really good to use when you want ambient recordings like that. Great
Public
resource.
service announcement.
Yeah, PSA. Yeah. A lot of the people really, they appreciate if you credit them is the main thing. Like, hey, I
Sure.
used this guy and that guy's recording in this. So it's a mix of like 3 forest recordings.
A great job on the video. I have
Thank
to
you.
commend you on the first one where you were playing guitar, right? The sync up wasn't always right, as you're well aware, I'm sure.
Uh-huh.
There wasn't one moment that it wasn't perfect in this one.
I'm glad you think so. My buddy Dusk, who's like an actual video guy, edited it instead of me.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
So that's why it was better.
that's money well spent.
Thanks.
Sometimes it's smarter to delegate. It's hard for me to learn that.
Absolutely, man. I think that's one of the biggest things I learned from this entire process. A lot of steps are good to delegate. Like for the woodwind session, I worked with a copyist because, I know how to write for strings ish and get decent parts together. And, I know you helped me with getting these parts together, but like woodwinds, I have no idea. I have the violin parts up here.
What I noticed in this piece is all music in its own way is tension and release.
Hmm.
Notice sometimes you'd have half-step dissonances in the middle of the piece where you'd hold them firm and not resolve for a long time. It's quite easy to read. As we get older, we all like the notes to be a little bit bigger. I love that every bar is numbered because when we're in the studio, it seems silly, but if you make every 10 bars numbered, we have to count bars constantly. And over the course of a day, it costs money.
Yeah, time is money.
The second violin plays the pizzicato in the lower octave.
Yeah,
The first violin above it. As I remember, we overdubbed the first violin.
like you said, we had violin 3 as a dub, and I remember, I remember you raising like, "Hey, this is like pretty high in the range. It might sound like a little tinny by
Yeah, on
itself."
the violin, more so than the viola or cello or bass, the very high register pizzicato comes out much more percussive, really.
You'll notice on the video that I had a piece of paper stuck on my, yeah. Because if you don't, you hear like when I do this, you hear.
I also remember somebody commenting about finding my dynamic description here interesting, that as if walking curiously into a mysterious winter night.
When you're sitting on top of a snow-crested mountain while you play, you don't really need those visualizations as much as we do.
Right, you have to like, you gotta invite the space in, man.
That's right.
Okay, so now I had both the harp and the strings recorded for realsies, and it was time to go record the woodwinds. Yeah, and the interesting thing about that session is that I actually ended up having to join remotely. I wasn't in the room while they recorded. And I didn't know this at the time, but it turns out there's actually really good tools now for engineers to stream the mix from their board to clients remotely in high fidelity. And in this case, it actually helped everyone in the session feel safer to have one less person in the room because of that whole thing of, like a global pandemic going on at the time.
Hey Gavin, how you doing? Pleasure working with you, man. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now I had the audio files from each of these sessions, and there was actually quite a bit of effort in just selecting my favorite takes from each one and compiling the final stems to send to my engineer in Singapore, Dale Lowe. I think I'm okay at mixing and can do it when I really want to, but Dale has a really keen ear and has helped me to really get a good semblance of this Japanese sound when I've worked with him in the past, so I thought it was worth working with him. I actually met him and the rest of his progressive metal band Test the Divide partially through a government program in Singapore that gives grants to local bands, which is like, for an American, it's like, what? You can get that? So Test the Divide runs their own studio in Singapore called Noiville Studios. And my math rock band at the time, Approaching Aphelion, worked with them for recording our songs Mint Ship as well as Refuge. Yeah, so let's hear a little bit from Dale about what he did on the piece.
Hey guys, my name is Dale and I'm going to show you Noiville Studios where I'm the mix engineer at. So Noiville Studios actually started when I think we were in LaSalle, like College of Music, and Tabitha came up to me and told me like, I want to start a studio. So I was like, you're crazy, but yeah, sure. So gave us 3 years and here we are. Following that, I met Gavin while working here. He consigned me to mix like some of the songs for his band Approaching Aphelion, where he was playing electric guitar on writing like math rock and stuff like that. And I loved working with him since. Let's dive in. Like I want to show you a bit of like what I did in his mix and how I got everything to sit. So here's a session for Gavin Leaper's Step by Step. Myriad of instruments. We have violin, viola, cello, double bass to like erhu, like a traditional Chinese instrument. We have stuff like the chudaiko, traditional Japanese instruments like the harp. I think this is like the first time I ever have mixed a harp in my life. It was pretty interesting and pretty fun for me, figuring out like how all these like different instruments work together. Gavin initially had like some ideas of like where things should be placed. Piano on the left, harp on the left, yeah, and all the strings like generally on the left, and like the woodwinds are all on the right. Like after we did that mix, like we realized that it sounded quite lopsided because like a lot of the arrangement was like quite string heavy. So having all the strings like constantly coming out on the left side of the stereo mix, like I gave Gavin my idea of like where the panning for the instrument should be. Beyond that, like some of the things I did here was generally, I didn't feel the need to like compress very much. In like string arrangements and this kind of scores, like you don't want to compress heavily to remove all of the dynamic range of the instruments because they're going to be loud in sections and soft sections. I actually do this thing called like top-down mixing. You start mixing not with the individual elements but with your master bus. I apply filters, some compression, some like thick emulations, kind of like get me closer to my finished product, because if I'm going to apply these things individually on each track, it doesn't really make sense in terms of like CPU load, so that it lessens the load on the computer but also lessens the work I need to do to each track, applying filters individually on each track just to get everything like sort of like prepped. I tend to do this thing called bus processing. I have a separate bus for all my string instruments, all the violins to go into, and then sort of like glues things together like step by step. You see the pun? Our strings go into a bus that goes into another bus for all the woodwinds and the strings, and then gradually it goes down to the entire sum. Oh, I forgot to mention, like the tricky part about like this mix was because there was like bleed. So like let's say you can hear the violin in the cello mic, but you also can hear the bass in the violin mic and stuff like that. So if like I solo certain things, like let's say my cello, yeah, you can totally hear the violins in the cello mic. And that's basically what I did for Gavin's mix. Thank you for joining us at Northview Studios. See you again sometime, Gavin.
So that concludes my video series about my new song, Step by Step. There really was a lot to share here, but I hope you appreciate some of the more in-depth explanations. I also wanted to let everyone know that I'm trying out my music endeavors full-time, baby. Woo! So if you enjoyed these videos and you want to support me, please consider joining my Patreon. I'm still developing what the rewards will be for the higher tiers, so stay tuned for that. I'm also starting to offer composition lessons as well as session musician services. So feel free to contact me on my Instagram if you're looking for composition lessons, if you want me to record guitar or piano on your song. I can also do strings arrangements, of course, or if you're otherwise looking for help getting that modern Japanese sound on your next record. The internet seems to have dubbed me somewhat of an expert on the topic, so I guess I'm qualified? Anyway, you'll be hearing from me a lot more often, so I hope to see you soon. Until then, じゃあね。